Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Andre with AndreReese.Biz, and of course, I'm out here today. Got another cyclecast for you guys. So today, just to jump into it real quick, today's topics, I got 3 to talk about. First one is, do you need a mentor? And who's been my mentor? The second one I want to talk about is accountability, and the most recent video that was posted by Actively Black, the clothing brand. And then last but not least, I'll talk about the walk for peace. So we got 3 things today on the docket. So first off, man, I'll tell you, things are heating up out here on this planet USA. Today is Tuesday, and so over the weekend there were significant protests throughout the United States, and they're regarding the recent person that passed, during a confrontation up there with ICE. So, man, heart goes out to her family and her kids and, all that. And I'll tell you, over this weekend, there were tons of protests all over the U.S. that were taking place. And I even know out here in Virginia, there were some significant rallies and marches that took place, to protest. And so I don't have a lot to say about this topic. I'm not really going to. All I can say to you guys is, we live in a society here where we're allowed to protest and demonstrate, and we all have a right to be able to do that. So exercise your right, and most importantly, be as careful as possible when you're out here being involved in anything that relates to protesting or expressing your opinion really loudly in a large group. So the whole goal is to express your opinion and your feelings, and make your voices known, and to be able to let me make sure I get across the street here. All right, hang on a second real quick. All right, you definitely want to be able to express your opinion and make sure it's being heard, by those that are out there. And if enough people, protest and exercise their right, hopefully over time, things will change. So that's kind of what the goal is. But if you are out and participate in anything that's happening, just remember the goal is to be able to get back home to your family and live one more day. That way you can go out and protest again. So just be careful when you're out here expressing your opinion. That's all I can really say to you guys. Like I said, the lady leaves behind a spouse or partner and 3 children, so, and this is never an easy thing at all. But like I said, try to do everything you can to keep from getting too gassed up, and the goal always is to be able to come back home. So, and the thing I've noticed now is you also got to be very careful, who you're listening to and who you're taking instructions from, because there is a ton of content out here right now that is fake, and it's really easy to have it push your buttons. I'll give you guys a good example. There's just on my normal feed, I had something that popped up, a series of different videos. So just on YouTube, no big deal. This particular channel has, I think 45 or 50,000 subscribers. Pretty significant. And when you look at their feed, it's all very sensationalized stories that are taking place about seizures and corruption and really, really bad behavior. And some of it's being, pinned on certain communities out here. And so I watched one video a couple days ago, and you know how that goes. And the video came up, I watched it, I was like, damn. And I actually was like, this is really significant. I have never heard anything about this story ever in my life. And it was something that happened pretty recently. And I keep my ear to the ground. And then so I started looking at some of the other stories that they had on there, and all very sensationalized titles and stuff. And I was looking in the comments of a number of them just to see if somebody said, oh yeah, this is AI, don't pay attention to it at all. But everybody was making comments that essentially agreed with the topic of the video. Folks were doing that. So I was just like, man, that's kind of crazy. And I was like, these guys may not know themselves. And so I kept looking and looking and looking and looking, and went going back through different videos, and nobody ever said anything. So I ultimately ended up just grabbing and the videos were constructed in such a way where it was a sensationalized story, and then from there they had clips from different news sources like MSNBC and CNN, but they didn't actually say that anything happened. It was kind of like filler stuff. And then they go back into like the fake rhetoric and stuff. So I grabbed some of the titles and took and dropped those into AI and said on Gemini, and said, hey, are these true? And it came back, no, it's not. And then some Snoop references came up. So pretty much everything that they have on this channel that everybody is following is fake and false. So, and if people are out there getting gassed up and, falling for this propaganda, it may push you to do something that you may ultimately regret later. So, like I said, use your right to protest. You have every right in the world. The goal is to make sure you guys come home, and that's what it's all about. And hopefully over time your voice gets heard and you can make a collective change. So I hate to see when these kind of things happen. And like I said, my heart goes out to the family and the kids and everybody else that's associated with the incident closely. So that's all I got to say on that. So, okay, so let's go ahead and actually today, let me just real quick, I'm out here doing the short ride. So it's roughly about 11 miles. I think I'll climb a total of 500 feet or so. And from there, I will make it back closer to dark. I'm fully bundled today. I got everything on. Plus I also bought these new gloves. I also got a little bit of a cough as well, so kind of bear with me through this as we ride and talk. So let's talk about the first issue today, about do you need a mentor in life? And to be honest with you guys, I'm 57 years old. I have never had a formal mentor-mentee relationship in my life. I've never really had anybody that's taken me under their wings, and tried to steer me. Wait. that try to, work with me and steer me, and somebody I can go to regularly with questions and issues. And so along the way, I've had some people, some older fellas that were, wise to the game overall, and we just talk about things just in general, but as far as like a actual mentor, I've never had one before. And so, is it necessary? No, it's not. It's all person specific. Is it useful to have one? Oh yeah, definitely it is, for sure. And do I wish I've ever had one? No, I mean, I don't have any regrets or anything that I've never had one, and not going out of my way right now, to trying to find one. So what have I done to be able to make it do what it do and try to survive out here without one? So essentially what I've done, and this is something that you can do, and I've had different virtual, I would call virtual mentors in my life. And so these are people that I don't know. They can be, a public figure, somebody that's on television. They can be somebody that has a podcast or a show. And in my life, I've had a number of different virtual mentors. And so, and I'd probably say this phenomenon really started in the late 90s as I was finishing up college and stuff. And podcasts were becoming more prevalent, and there's a point where YouTube got to be a little bit more prevalent as well. And then there was radio, and there was talk radio and stuff. And so what I tended to do was gravitate towards people that had information at the time that was going to help me get to the next level. And so whenever they had their podcast or they had their radio show or whatever, I would listen to them, and instinctively, every single time that they had a show, I would listen to them. And so I would listen to their conversations, I listened to their content, I listened to their game, and I would turn around and try to implement that into my life. And so based upon not having an actual relationship, but kind of extrapolating what kind of things that they've done in their life to get them to where they are, and then turn around and try to model myself after these individuals. And even within the finance community, there's a number of folks I've listened to over the years to learn about money, finance, taxes, and those kind of things. I spent a long time listening to somebody like Clark Howard. So he was a very practical guy, and he was a cheapskate, went out of his way to try to spend the least amount of money as possible. How you doing? And so I would listen to his different shows that he had, and he would talk about every topic in the world, from buying a car to buying a house, getting the best interest rates on credit cards, all that stuff. And I would take and implement those things into my life, and I would be able to utilize those, and even somebody like, there's even Ray Lucia at one point. I listened to him for a long time, even went to one of his seminars, face to face, and got to meet him. He talked about buckets of money and investing and retiring and all those type of things, And so there's been a lot of people along the way, not just these guys as an example, but there's even at one point I listened to Tom Likas, and he was a man's man, and somebody like that is extremely controversial in everything he talks about. And so you're like, well, how could you listen to somebody like that? So what you have to do is you have to be able to separate the good from the bad. And I think that's why now, when people get angry and they get upset with certain public figures, I can still find the good in what they do because I've had to, because you got to figure, nobody you're going to agree with 100% of the time on this planet. And the moment that you don't agree with one thing that they say, that doesn't invalidate everything else. So I would definitely listen to him. And I learned a lot about relationships with women and learned a lot about, getting out there and hustling and putting your all into your work and trying to be the best person that you can be. And, and there's a whole bunch of other topics about cooking, saving money, practical things that you can do, trying to put yourself first and above other people, and, having a good group of people around you that you could kind of bounce ideas off of, So, he's a very controversial shock jock, and it was also a great way to get a insight on how, being involved in a once thriving industry, what happens to you when the tide changes and you go from being on top of the game to more or less walking into survival mode, and then being able to figure out how you're going to navigate the new ship and be able to keep going and make it happen. And so that was one of the big things that he had went through that I was able to get a lot of game and understanding from. And so how do you go about, deciding if these people should be a virtual mentor or not? And what you got to do, and I think what happens is, like example, Ray Lucia, he's probably still on the radio. I know I'm on a podcast. Clark Howard, he's still doing his thing. I listen to him every once in a while. I think I looked maybe a year ago, and I think Ray Lucia is still, not Ray Lucia, but Tom Likas is still doing some stuff out there. So a lot of it comes down to season of life. So I think what ends up happening is, here, hang on a second. Okay. Yeah, I think what happens is, people will come along in life when it's time and it's appropriate. And when you no longer have a need for that, or you've graduated and moved on, you will ultimately be able to find somebody else to replace them. And I even got a lot of mentorship from watching popular movies, like The Matrix, and, there was a movie I was just watching the other night, The Game, with, it had, and I'll talk about that one on another story, but that one had Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. So learned a lot from watching those kind of things. And even The Wire, that was an incredible series. And if you can see beyond the movie, not the movie, but the show, and kind of peel back the layers, there's a lot of information that can be learned. And a lot of what is in The Wire now, I'd say 85% of it, 90% of it can be applied to what's happening right now up in Minnesota. So I think I'm gonna do a video on that separately another time, but I'll at least tease that right now. And so how did I go out of my way to try to figure out who I should or could trust? And so, of course, if you're watching a movie, there's a certain amount of fakery and sorcery that's associated with the script. you know, you should be bright enough to know that. But if you're dealing with folks that are speaking online, they're trying to build an audience, they're you know, they may sell things or whatever. How do you go about knowing that somebody is worth listening to? And I'll tell you, one guy I used to follow was Kevin Samuels. And so he's an extremely controversial person. And in the end, you either liked him or you didn't. And I think a lot of people that didn't like him before really like him and appreciate him now. He's long since passed, but his game is still out there. And he was a cat that was hard on us fellas. That's where he got his start. And he would, brothers would call into the show and he would kick us up and down the stairs, you know, being brutally honest with us about our problems and our issues and things we needed to get together and how we needed to get our life aligned and focused and, you know, all that. And so when I started listening to him, he came along at a time in my life where I needed that type of support and guidance also, as well as I was trying to make a transition to where I am right now. And so I got a lot of useful information from him. And so, you know, I know there's a certain element of the story that, you know, with him where people were not happy and they felt that he went about things a certain way. It's all true. He absolutely did. And, you know, some people took the message and made adjustments and changes and they're happy. Other folks, you know, fought him all the way and celebrated his passing, and they're still in the same situations now. So I learned a lot from him. And so how did I end up, you know, choosing him amongst all the other people? So when I started watching him, we'll talk about Kevin Samuels. When I started watching him, I think I got a referral from one of my friends. They said, hey, check this out. And started watching his videos, looking at his old content and his catalog. I was like, God damn, this is some really, really interesting stuff here. And so what he would do, he would give really long, you think I talk long, he would talk long and break out a complete story. He would talk about statistics, he would talk about, you know, his interpretation, and he would talk about his background and how it all played in it. And so I'll give you an example. I had always been kind of a loner before, and one of the things he talked about is like, you know what, we as men, we can't go at this alone. So we have to have a support system, a group of really close friends, doesn't have to be super large, but a group of friends that you could run some things by and talk about some different scenarios. And, you know, and if you're able to do that, they'll be able to kick you in the behind and get you going in the right place. You know, and so, like I said, I'd always been kind of a loner before. And one of the things he had mentioned, he said, I'll give you guys an example. He's like, he was a guy that was a Comic-Con nerd. He said, go watch The Mandalorian. And it's a story about a guy that, you know, is on his own. He's a mercenary and he's out doing his own thing. He gets captured and then he eventually becomes part of the tribe that took him in, and he became a stronger person. So what I did was I stopped what I was doing and watching him, and actually went to, I think, Disney at the time and pulled up The Mandalorian, and I watched, and I'll tell you, you guys know me, I am not a Star Wars fan at all. I've never really ever seen Star Wars or any of the movies. I may have gone once when something was out when Amber was a baby, and I probably was awake no more than 5 minutes and I slept through the whole thing. So it is just not my thing at all. And so I sat there and watched The Mandalorian, and saw the points of the movie and the show, and I was like, you know what? After I got done, I said everything that he said here was 100% correct. Absolutely correct. And so, and I'll tell you, along the way, as he would mention things, or he would reference things, or he would bring up statistics, I would stop what I was doing, listening to that person or listening to him, and I'd go out and do internet research, or I'd watch the video just to make sure that I could really rely on and trust his opinion and way he was interpreting things. And so that's what, if you're not able to get a mentor, there's nothing wrong with having a virtual mentor, which is like what I did. And so when it all comes down to it now, when he passed, I didn't watch any more Kevin Samuel stuff. So I already had gotten the game, and my brother mourned his passing. But you know, all the things that I do now, that I have done, that I will do, has a very strong influence from the game I got from him. And so many of the guys that I know around me, and a number of the ladies also as well, were very heavy Kevin Samuel fans, you know. And so, like I said, he was extremely controversial, and a lot of people out here are extremely controversial. And so that doesn't mean that you should necessarily cut them and ignore them. They may still have valuable information, so you just kind of have to pick and choose, you know. So that's it. So when it comes to having a mentor, I've never had one. I've always had virtual mentors, you know. I can honestly say for the last 30 years. And there's a number of different people I watch online that are independent, and I appreciate their candor, and I appreciate the things that they say. And a lot of stuff that they talk about, I don't agree with at all, the way that they present it or the way that the facts are, but I still listen to them and get their guidance on certain things, because they have a little bit more experience than I do, and they might have a way of breaking things down. So I just want to at least throw that out here to you guys. So if you don't have a mentor, it's okay. You can still make it in this life. You know, it's best to have one that can handhold you and guide you along the way. It's like what I'm doing now with my daughter. I'm definitely more of a mentor to her than a father. So when she needs something, she's got a question or issue, she can reach out to me. I can provide her with the information and game that she needs to be able to go for it and do the work herself, you know. And so that's the kind of the capacity that I'm working with her. So that's it for this subject. I got nothing else to say on it. So if you don't have a mentor, all good. You know, you can always find a virtual mentor. And if you don't agree with the person, that's even better. If they're very outspoken, they're very controversial, that's even better, because you can learn to think outside the box and pick and choose what you want to listen to. And at some point down the road, you may find that a lot of things that they may have said that you didn't agree with, you can at least agree to disagree and keep things going. So, and I doubt if it's any different in having an actual live mentor situation. So the next thing let's talk about is let's talk about accountability. And I don't know if you guys got to see it or not, but there's a clothing line that a brother, I think he used to play professional football. He's from the soil, so he's a foundational Black American, his people, descendants of slaves, all that whole thing. And he created a clothing line called Actively Black. And it's designed to help celebrate, you know, the Black experience here in the U.S. and also highlight a lot of the iconic Black history moments that's taken place. He has drops that encompass HBCU logos. There's even Star Wars. There's Michael Jackson. There's the, I forget the guy's name, but he was the one that was in the Olympics that did the fist. They had a thing for him, the guy that was the one that drank out the water fountain. So there's a lot of pride stuff. Plus there's this ordinary, really cool athletic gear, everything from slides to backpacks. You got sweatpants, you got hoodies, you got shirts, You got long sleeve shirt, not long sleeve shirts, but long sleeve athletic shirts and short sleeve and tank tops. There's also Wakanda gear. So anything that you can want from a black clothing line in the United States, if you're patient, it'll probably pop up with these guys. So they make some really, really good stuff. I've got a number of their pieces. It's not the cheapest stuff around. The stuff is very high quality, and and I really enjoy it. I really appreciate it. And so Marilyn has bought me a couple of actively black items, over the years, and I definitely do wear those, and I do appreciate them. And so they've recently been going through a lot of growing pains, and I'll tell you, everybody wants to start a restaurant, everybody wants to have a clothing line, everybody wants to be a musician or a rapper. And I'll tell you, these are some of the most hardest and most difficult businesses to try to float. And anything, if you decide you want to just become a barber, all you got to do is just overcome the hurdle of getting licensed. But after that, all you need is a place for the person to sit. You need some clippers and some scissors and some stuff to wipe their neck down with, and you can be in business. And the majority of the money that you are going to have is going to be profit. So whatever you deal with, any kind of product-based business, it gets to be very, very tough, because you got to have money to buy inventory, and you never know when the inventory is going to sell. And you still have other costs that are going. You have to buy new inventory to replace the inventory that's sold. Plus you might have employees, you got insurance, you got to have a place to put all this stuff. So oftentimes they operate on a very, very, very thin profit margin. It's not unusual to have that happen with a clothing or a restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. And so last year they had the Olympics, I believe it was, and they actually had a number of different items. I think they were chosen to be the official sweatsuit maker for the team Nigeria. And I have Nigerian heritage, almost 38%. So I was really gassing on that. I wanted to get one of the sweatsuits. I went ahead and placed the order. And it took a long time. A bunch of months went by. The Olympics came and went. And, we came into Christmas time and the item never showed up. And eventually I just asked if they can return my item and give me my money back. And I'll look at buying something at another point. And so since then, I haven't bought anything at all. I've had my eye on some stuff that I want to get, and I had it saved in my Black Friday purchase tab. But before Black Friday came and went, those items that I wanted got sold out. And so I missed out on getting those individual things. So I still have an intent to spend money with this company and all that. But make a long story short, he recently, so they had a very tough time getting inventory. Then of course, Trump came into office, and there was tariff issues and slowdowns of getting product into the United States, and so they were having some logistical issues. They were trying to get product. So during the holiday season that just passed, I think they said they had roughly 11,000 items that they sold, and they were only able to fulfill like 90% of them. So roughly 1,100 items they weren't able to ship in time for the holidays. And some of the items, I'm assuming they probably sold them within a week or two of Black Friday. So you would think theoretically folks would be able to get the stuff. But ultimately in the end, folks didn't get it. So he came on and made, it was either a 10 or 20 minute video. I don't know if I saw it on Instagram or TikTok, but he apologized profusely for what happened. And he went through and explained and walked everybody through all the things that they went through that Christmas season. So the majority of it, he took responsibility and blame for it. He said there was some other things that were happening, with products and tariffs and getting things through customs that were beyond his control, but he essentially said, hey, I'm sorry guys. We've come to the table trying to produce products that appeal to our folks, and we let you guys down. And there's always going to be a group of black folks out here that are going to jump on our graves and be happy and say they're never going to shop with black-owned businesses. This kind of thing, was not necessarily directed towards them, but it was for the people that are supporters of the company and the movement. And so he took responsibility for what happened and went down, and he asked for forgiveness. And he said, hey, we're not one of the big brands like, you guys know the big brands out there. And so we have growing pains, we have struggles, we're trying to make it here. And I'll tell you, it was very refreshing to see him stand up there and fall on a sword. And I'll tell you, there are so many examples now of businesses that fail because, they don't do what they're supposed to do. They don't put the customer first. They overpromise and they underdeliver. And then their base of customers and clients that they have never, ever, come back. And so it was really nice to see him, get up there and, like I said, fall on a sword and talk about the issues and problems and growing pains that they're going through. He had just had a baby also as well, and he, was immediately back in the warehouse trying to fulfill orders, and he had hired a team of people, and they did everything that they could possibly do to try to make it happen, but they ended up falling short. And he said, a lot of times these kind of things, 90%, is good, but they want to be 100%, in their execution, and they're going to be putting some things into play this year to try to hope that they don't end up back in this spot and having to, kind of do the same thing again. And so there's nothing, and so the point of me bringing this up is, and if you go and look in the comments, there were so many folks that were like, man, and I think, I'll tell you what, if I had bought something and I didn't get it for Christmas, I wouldn't have gotten mad at all, as long as I knew what was up. And I think what was different when I had my issue with my sweatsuit is that there wasn't necessarily any communication on what was happening, what was going on. And so, with me emailing back and forth a few times to try to find out what was up, eventually I just made the decision to end the order. And I think even after a month or two, the item was still up there and they still didn't have them, and I kind of moved on at that point. And I think at some point I was kind of like, what? I'm glad I didn't spend the money. So maybe it was divine intervention keeping me from spending that much on a tracksuit. I think it was $250, $300 or something like that, and I could have used the money for other stuff, but like I said, the main point here is that, and I think that this applies to business, but it also applies just to life in general. And so in order for us to be able to move forward and do better as a people, as a society, as a country, there's a certain amount of accountability that we all have to take for what we're responsible for in the problem. And if folks aren't able to take responsibility and accountability, and that could even be in a relationship you have with your honey boo boo, if folks don't take accountability, there's no way in the world that things will ever get better. And the most important thing is, if somebody does stand up and they decide that they want to express that they're taking accountability, the only way that you can know for sure if it's legitimate and just not, smoke being blown up your behind, is that you have to be able to see what they do going forward and their actions and their works. And if things are still the same, nothing's changed, those people aren't people that you necessarily want to be around you. And so if he truly is accountable for all the stuff that's happening and making big changes to keep things going forward in the future, the brand will be successful. It has no choice to be. But if this is, lip service, which I think he was 100% true and intentional what he was saying, but I'm just kind of being the devil's advocate here. But if he wasn't intentional about what he was saying, ultimately in the end, his business is going to fail. And this goes across multiple lines. If you are not being accountable at work, you'll lose your job. If you're not being accountable as a manager, you'll eventually get fired. If you're a business owner, you're not being accountable, you'll lose your business to the competition. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. So I think it was a breath of fresh air to see somebody stand up and take accountability for issues and problems. And I would encourage all you guys, whenever things happen in your life that didn't go the right way, the best part, and what I've learned in my life, the best part to be able to solve the problem and move forward is to examine what happened, what went wrong, take responsibility for all the things that you did to input into the problem, and fix them and try not to do it anymore. That's all you can really do. And hopefully over time, you'll learn your lessons, and those lessons will be applied to the situation. And ultimately, you know, things will get better, you know, so. But that's it. So that's all I got to say about accountability and Actively Black. So if you guys ever get a chance to, log on to their website. It's just activelyblack.com. And they got some incredible, I'll tell you what got me first excited about them is the soul of their commercials. And I was like, I want to put on one of these sweatsuits. And if I get a sweatsuit, I'll be able to dance like these brothers and sisters are. So it's a fantastic clothing brand, great colors, great design and all that as well. So if you guys get a chance to try to log on and support the brand, if you've never had before in the past, you'll be sure to go ahead and buy some of the gear and support them and make it all happen. So, so that's it. So that's all we got to say about that. So the last topic today is let's talk about the walk for peace that's taking place right now. And so this is kind of a topic that's dear to my heart. And so what is the walk for peace? And I think everybody pretty much has heard about it. I'll just give you guys a quick background. But there's these, they're venerable monks that are from Fort Worth, Texas. That's where their base camp is. And so they've made a decision to walk from Texas all the way to Washington, D.C. And they're doing what they call a walk for peace. And so they've been doing this now. I think today is day 80 or day 81, and then they're down now in South Carolina. So what they're essentially doing is, like I said, it's a 120-day trek. They're walking roughly about 20 miles a day. So they start out in the morning and they walk for about 10 miles, and then they stop for lunch, and then they hop back to it, and then they spend the remainder of the day walking to their final destination. And once they get to the final destination, and a lot of times it's a community center or a church, they're being put up. I think there's been some instances where they've stayed, out in a campground outside or whatever, depending on what the weather was. But it's a total of, like I said, 24 monks that are walking this trek to get to DC. So they're doing this to raise awareness and to be able to spread peace and love and understanding. And they've got a Facebook page right now that you can follow. And last look, they had over 1 million people that were following their journey. And so when they first started out, they had, there really wasn't much that was going on with it. A few people here and there that would see them and maybe join them or walk with them. But now when you see them coming into some place like South Carolina, they were walking across the bridge, and there was just them in a line close to the side of the road. And then there's thousands of people behind them also walking with them as well, And so I'm lucky, and I'd say we are lucky and we're blessed that they will actually make it here through Richmond, Virginia, and they will continue on through Washington, D.C. And I think from what I looked at the other day, they're about 18 or 20 days out from this location. And so what I want to do is I want to join them when they do their Walk for Peace and they come through. I know a lot of people will also be part of the Walk for Peace as well. And so you can actually go to the Facebook page. There's a link that will get you to their live walk map that will show you exactly where they are, and they kind of plan like the next day what their route is, so you can be able to see that. But I would love to show up and support these guys as they walk. And then they also have a dog that they're walking with as well. I think his name is I think it's a cola is what it is. And so I think he recently had some surgery, and I think they're now pulling him in a wagon. But so folks are really being touched and moved by this outpouring of peace and love. And to be honest with you guys, this is something that, and you ask yourself all the time, it's like, well, you have all these incredible things that are happening right now in our country, whether you like them or not. They are incredible, they're sensational, they are beyond most people's expectations, and so you're like, well, what can I do to make a difference? And so you figure, these guys here, they made a decision to go on a walk. And I looked it up on Google and on Gemini. There hasn't been any other instances where somebody has walked this far, in a religious order and just in general, for the purpose of, peace. I mean, we've always had short walks, the March on Washington, the Get on the Bus movement, all that type of stuff, but to walk this distance, I think it's 2,300 miles is what it is, to walk this distance. And then some of the guys that are walking, the monks, they are walking barefoot, so in the beginning, some of them were barefooted. Now some of them are actually tying their feet up and using tape, that type of thing, but for the most part, they're barefoot. And some of them have the hookah or hoka shoes that they're wearing, so that they can be able to, have, a little bit more comfort. And some of the monks, they've doing profiles. Some of them are in their late 60s also as well, making this trek. So I bring this particular topic up to say, in the calamity and the sensationalism and the incredibleness of what's happening right now, a lot of us want to figure out what can we do to make things better. How can we help other people? How can we make things happen? Some folks will choose to protest. Other folks will choose to donate. Other ones will choose to get on the phone and help with voting organizations. And so this is something that is unique. And I think that a lot of people want to be able to come out and support these guys. And so me personally, you kind of wonder, why in the world do I do these videos? And so to be honest with you, it's to try to help in a way that is useful, and a lot of people, a lot of clients I've talked to, people just in general, they have gotten hung up and they've gotten stuck and they've gotten depressed, and they've gotten to the point where it's very difficult for them to survive day to day and deal with all the things that are happening around us. And so my goal is to try to, and I'm not any different than anybody else is. I've just learned through a lot of trial and effort and fire in my life to be able to take very, very difficult situations that were happening to me or that were happening around me and still be able to try to stay focused and keep my eye on the prize and still try to, figure out what the lesson is to be learned and try to keep going forward. And so when I talk about these various topics, the whole idea here is to share information with you that you can use to help yourself personally, financially, physically, to be able to keep your head on a swivel, and most importantly, not lose sight of hope. And I see so many folks right now that are crashing out because of what's happening. And I see folks that are things that they post online on Facebook and on TikTok and all that. There's a lot of people that are going through a lot of despair and a lot of crisis right now. And I've even watched the one guy, I think a lot of people watch him, what's his name? Hey Anthony. He's a very smart guy. He might be a little bit on the spectrum, but I think his sister comes into his bedroom and asks him some questions about what's going on politically. And he always has a lot of stuff to say about things. And so the thing I've noticed with him is that he is now getting more and more into kind of a severe crisis override when it comes to the way he's talking about things. So it's very easy to get caught up in what's happening and lose sight on what you can do to be able to still keep hope and still keep happiness, enjoying your life. And so, like I said, this is the reason why I do these videos. And so there's a lot of chances that you won't agree with the things that I talk about. That's not what it's about at all. It's about providing you with information that you can actually use. And if you can't use it today, maybe you can use it at a later point. And I've talked to so many different people, friends, and I've posted videos before, and I've had family members call me like immediately afterwards and, talk to me about what they saw, and so I'm just doing my part here. This is my this is my walk for peace is what I'm doing here. So I am trying to provide things that you guys can use, hopefully, to make life a little bit easier for you. That way you can ultimately, be able to ride this thing out and get through it to the other side and still have hope for life and for humanity. So hats off to these guys, these venerable monks that are making the trek. And I'm really looking forward to them getting here to Richmond. I know by the time that they get here to Richmond, there's going to be some incredible crowds. And I think that what the protocol is, you're not walking with them. There's a lot of people that line the streets and stuff. But if you want to walk along with them, you're able to walk behind them as they kind of walk through and pass. And so, like I said, I think they started out originally with 24. I don't know if they're all still there right now. I haven't done, a follow-up count. But like I said, don't lose hope. And find your own way that you could make life better. And so if you are, and I'll tell you, a good example, I see so many people right now that post online. They're like, they post something and like, is this what you voted for? Is this what you voted for? Is this what you voted for? That doesn't help the cause at all. Of course, I think most people did not vote for these things. I would like to think, there's got to be some other positive way that you can go about, potentially making things better for people that would encourage them to maybe consider what your side of the equation is. And so when they get to the point where, and I'll tell you, and we all know this, there's people in our lives that we have told over and over and over. And I'll tell you, a good example of this is the reason why I love Marilyn, and the reason why she is in my life is, and I told her in the beginning, I said, I don't need much. I just need, maybe something to eat every once in a while, a hot dog, and, if you could, be nice to me, be kind to me, do something, that is special that, only a wife would do for a husband. And then I said, most importantly, just keep an eye out for me. Keep an eye out for me and make sure that I'm okay, because I don't catch everything. I just need someone just to keep an eye out for me. And so that's what she does for me. She keeps an eye out on me. And I don't know how many times that she's told me, she's like, hey, look, what you're doing, you should do it this way. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do it that way. It's wrong. No, I like the way I do it. And she knows me, and she knows that all she has to do is just plant a seed. And so at that moment, am I going to do it? Probably not. But what ends up happening is I think about it, and I'm like, you know what? All the things that she said before in the past, they've all worked out to my benefit, so I'm gonna go ahead and do this. So I come back around to her, it might be a day or two or a week later, and I'll be like, hey baby, I had a dream, and the Lord came to me in a dream, and he told me I need to start doing this thing in my life. And then so as I'm telling her, she's looking at me all cross-eyed, and I'm telling her exactly what she told me to do. And I'm kind of like trying to keep my laugh in. And I was like, yeah, it's divine intervention. It's the Lord that came down and put it on my heart. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this thing now, and we kind of have a little giggle about it eventually, but like I said, if there's people in your life right now that are doing things that are negative and they're hurtful for them, there's nothing you can do to make them stop. All you can do is just be supportive of them, and when they make a decision to do something else, hopefully they'll remember the advice or the things that you told them to do. So try to be a beacon of hope for, and I'll tell you, you never know who's watching you and what you're doing. And there's a certain amount of people that will always support you no matter what, but I think it's best for all of us to try to have an effect and influence on as many people as possible. And if you were able to watch some of the videos of the flyovers, the drone shots of just 24 guys that started out with a goal just to make it to DC, walking there in 120 days, and see all the folks now that are thankful and holding signs of peace and support and love. This is not anything that we all this is something that we're all capable of. It doesn't have to necessarily be at this scale. You don't have to try to walk from here to Canada, but there's things that you can do in your life every day that will have a positive and negative effect on people. And if you stay within the sphere of negativity, overall, things will never get any better for anybody at all. You know, and so if you're really unhappy about what's happening with this current administration, fine. You know, it's inevitable. Try to find what you can do to make a difference, and it would affect other people and their lives eventually. And so if you are being positive about stuff, your results that you will have and influence on people will be manifested and realized later on. But if you're being negative all the time and you know, not being helpful to the overall cause, it's not going to change anything overall. You know, so that's just kind of what you have to do to be a beacon of hope. So I'm looking forward to these guys when they come through. I log in every day and check and see where they're at. Like I said, they're down in South Carolina right now. They're making their walk. They have an incredible impact on folks that are in the United States right now, just based upon their pilgrimage that they're doing. And like I said, hats off to them. And may they continue to be able to bring hope and inspiration to folks. And that's all I got to say. So we talked about 3 topics today. I talked about having a mentor, a virtual mentor, talked about taking accountability, and most importantly, we talked about the walk for peace and what you can do to try to help increase the amount of hope and awareness out here on this planet. So that's it, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and ride across the river here and try to get finished up with this ride, and then try to get home to my wife and give her a hug and a kiss and all that as well. So I just want to thank you guys for always tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe to whatever channels you find this on, and most importantly on my YouTube. And I wish you guys a happy and prosperous week, and take care. And I will see you in the next CycleCast here in the next day or 2. I might be out again tomorrow, so we'll see. But take care, guys. We'll be in touch. Is it walking a cat? What the hell? Yep, walking a cat. Man, we got a great sunset also too. In my life. Oh, shit. Okay, my brother fell. This is black ice. Okay. All right, I'm okay. All systems check. All right, I'm good. So let me just penguin it.